Hi, this is Stephanie Pichet. I'm here with the Red Carpet Report, RCR News Media, and we're interviewing filmmakers for the Santa Fe Film Festival. Today we have Jordan Livingston, and he's going to be talking about his feature film, DeLorean Living the Dream, and that is DeLorean, the car. So welcome, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's Jordan, by the way.
Oh, I'm
Jordan.
sorry, Jordan. And I have my glasses on. My bad. I apologize.
That's all right. Thank you for having me.
So where are we talking to you from today?
This is my little home office in San Rafael, California, just north of San Francisco.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I worked in Silicon Valley as a marketing strategist for startups, tech startups, until the bubble burst.
Yeah, and now you're in Santa Fe?
Now I'm in Albuquerque, actually, just south.
Albuquerque.
Mm-hmm.
I think you made a good move.
Yeah, we moved actually on the 14th of this month will be a year, and we left Los Angeles. We were there for the past.
I love New Mexico. I'm a big fan.
Great.
I love it.
We love it too. It's an amazing place. So tell us about your film. What inspired you to come up with this idea?
Well, I guess the initial idea for the film was to make a short film.
Okay.
I actually started this process more than 12 years ago.
Wow.
And I had no idea what it would become, that it was going to become this 12-year saga in my life. But I started making a short film because there was a press release that I saw stating that they were going to be making new DeLoreans and that the DeLorean was going to be coming back. And so that grabbed my attention, and I did a little research, and I found out that there was a company that had basically bought all of the leftover parts, and they were going to be making new DeLoreans out of those original parts. And so what started out as this sort of tiny little news vignette, if you will, sort of became a situation where I fell down the rabbit hole, and I stumbled upon what I now refer to as the international DeLorean community.
Oh.
And I had no idea that there was such a thing as a DeLorean community. I didn't know that that existed. But once I sort of fell into that, I became enamored with it. And I'm very inspired by the story, because as it turns out, this is a car that has a profound impact on not just automotive history, but really on all kinds of things, from politics to popular culture. Mm-hmm. And so the car, the DeLorean, really was a vehicle, so to speak, for telling this really interesting story about a community of people from all over the world who've come together and united around this car or around this story. And so I really just fell in love with the story, and I felt that that it had never been told before by anyone else. And there are lots of other films that are sort of about John DeLorean as the man, and there are other films that are sort of about some of the scandals and controversy that took place. But there has never been a movie about the community of DeLorean owners and enthusiasts that span the globe and sort of transcend language barriers, politics, religion, age, and all these diverse people come together. And so that story had never been told. And that's really what the movie is about.
So what are some of the interesting things you found about this community? Because I used to have an MG, and there were, little car clubs online. And I'm not going to say I was like into them, but if I needed help with something, I would go to them and they would know what to do or where to recommend.
Well, lots of cars have communities that spur up around them. But the interesting thing about the DeLorean is just that it transcends age, class, wealth, language. Like, you might have a lot of people, for example, in an MG club, and my guess is that they're very similar demographic of people. But the DeLorean has such broad appeal, and it has this broad appeal because there's really something for everyone. There are people who are into the design of the car. It has this timeless Italian design by Giugiaro that just defines the whole decade from the 70s to the 80s, really. And then you have people who are automotive historians, and they follow John DeLorean's career from Pontiac and Packard to, creating the Pontiac GTO. He's considered to be the father of the American muscle car. And then he went out and decided to create the DeLorean. You have people who are really inspired by the innovations that he brought. And then, of course, you have people who love the movie Back to the Future. And Back to the Future cemented the DeLorean in pop culture. And so you have every generation, you have different people that discover this movie. And then they discover that there's actually a car from the movie that's a real car that you can go out and drive. And so it just brings people together in a way that I've never seen before. And it's the only car that I've ever seen at a car show. Like, you can park it next to $1 million car and everyone comes and looks at the DeLorean. And it's also a car where, if you pull up to a gas station in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, people say, oh, look at that cool car. When you pull up in a DeLorean, people go, oh, look at that DeLorean. They know exactly what it is. Everybody knows what it is. And so I was just fascinated by this phenomenon and wanted to try to, portray that and figure out what was behind that.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that you had seen a press notice or something about new DeLoreans. So you went down a rabbit hole? Is that a true thing, or?
Well, as it turns out, this has been in the news cycle for quite a long time. And it's just one of the amazing things about the DeLorean story. So just to give you a brief bit of background, the DeLorean Motor Company went out of business by the end of 1982, and there were some cars released as 1983 cars, but essentially the company was out of business in 82. But they had produced enough parts at the time to build somewhere around 700 complete cars. And so what happened is, over the years, this parts cache ended up getting purchased by a private company that also purchased the rights to use the name DeLorean Motor Company. And so it's one of the first cars that they pioneered. You could go online and order parts online. And so for generations, this quote unquote DeLorean Motor Company was a business that you could do business with. They have been promoting and marketing that they're going to be building new DeLoreans. And, in some aspects they've been really, making them out of older parts. But now the current plan is they're actually going to start building brand new cars that are electric. But this has sort of been, once I got into the DeLorean world, I realized that this story is a story that keeps sort of making the rounds. So you still can't go to a showroom and buy a new DeLorean yet, but there is some truth to it. You can basically get what is essentially an almost entirely new car, and soon you'll be able to get one that is electric.
Oh, wow.
But part of the reason that the DeLorean has lasted so long when other cars have faded away is because of this parts availability. Because you can still get about 90% of the parts you can still get for the car. And that has kept them on the road, and it's also made them affordable and accessible, because it's the one exotic car that an average middle-class person can afford and own. And that's also a big part of the appeal is, we use this word a lot in today's culture. We say, democratizing. And, but John DeLorean really pioneered that. He wanted there to be a car was originally supposed to sell for only $12,000. it ended up not meeting that goal. It ended up selling for maybe $25,000. But the idea was that everyone should be able to have a really nice, really cool car with style and with design. And that was part of the original idea for the DeLorean, and it really has proven to be true.
Mhm. So do you think in 50 to 100 years we'll be seeing DeLoreans flying and going back in time?
Well, I don't know about flying. I think that you'll definitely still see them
Mhm.
because the fact that they're made of primarily,
Oh,
stainless steel and
stainless steel, right?
fiberglass,
Right.
so they're not going to rust
Rust.
away. They'll, at least the bodies will be around. But
Mhm.
I do think that a lot of people are modifying them and making them into electric cars
Mhm.
and doing things to keep them on the road. So I do think you'll see them on the road in 50 years in some form or another. They might be electric, but you'll see them all right.
So how
And
many
the design is
sorry.
still going to look good.
Sure. Oh yeah, it's pretty much timeless because if you look at how the different manufacturers make bodies change,
Mhm.
they go from that bubble thing and then they go to this flatter thing and then they go back
Yep,
to the so it's cycling through, but it keeps
exactly.
coming back to that. So how many do you think, or do you know how many DeLoreans are on the road today?
Well, they made just under 9,000 originally,
Okay.
and it's believed that there are about 6,000 remaining.
Wow.
So the majority of them are still on the road. And again, a lot of the reason for that is that they won't rust.
Hmm.
And I think another part of the reason is a lot of people kept them as they thought they'd be collector's items that would
Collectors.
appreciate,
Right.
over time, and that a lot of them have not been driven.
Mm.
But there's about 6,000 on the road that we know about in the community. And I
Mm.
think that they are mostly ones that are driven.
Mm.
So it's pretty remarkable.
So what is have you had any feedback about your film from these enthusiasts? Do they know that you've done this? Have you told the car groups?
Hmm. Well, the DeLorean community is very actively supportive of the film. Um, they have been the sort of the champions of the project, and they've waited patiently and supported me for over 12 years. And a lot of people from within the DeLorean community helped to fund the film as
Oh,
well.
nice.
It was really made possible by people's contributions. So the community is very aware of the project, and of course they love it because it really is a love letter to them and to their car.
Hmm.
Um, Outside the community, the movie has played in a few festivals, but as you know, because of COVID, the whole festival experience has been dramatically changed.
Right.
So, with the exception of people like yourself, like people who have either written a review or interviewed me, I'm not really sure what the response is because I'm not in the room.
Right.
I'm not in the room with them, um, but I feel very lucky because it has been showing in a couple festivals, and it seems that it's something that people are definitely interested in.
Oh, I'm definitely interested. I love the DeLorean. I don't want to say how old I am, but honestly, I was around when they were still selling them, so that'll tell you something. But or shall I say, I was around, not still around. I'm still but I absolutely, first of all, I absolutely love the car, and I've any fact or fiction thing on TV about John DeLorean or the
Mhm.
DeLoreans, watched, including Back to the Future movies several times. So it's
Mhm.
one of those iconic things, as you point out, for pop culture
Mhm.
importance. And it's funny because whenever I'm talking to younger people about pop references that they have no idea,
Mhm.
this is something that they will know because Back to the Future, right? So it's
Sure.
important for even though it's a movie or a series of movies, it's important to have that as part of the support of this
Mhm.
story, and to be I could see it in 50 years people are still going to know based on the
Sure.
movie Back to the Future, right? And they're going to have that reference even if there aren't DeLoreans around. But I
Well,
think that's
it
a
gave the car a second life
right.
because when the car came out, it wasn't always seen in a positive light. There was a lot of really bad things that happened. First of all, the country was in a horrible recession,
Right. I
and
remember.
and then to top that off, the East Coast was in a record-breaking blizzard.
Mhm.
And so people weren't buying new cars, any new cars, let alone a new sports car.
Mhm.
And so then you had the whole situation. I don't know how much you want me to go into it, but the car was being made in Northern Ireland, and it was being made with British taxpayer dollars as a subsidy. And Margaret Thatcher came into power and canceled the program
Mhm.
entirely and pulled the funds. And so you had a car company that was already struggling, and then the funds were pulled and basically bankrupted the company overnight.
Mhm.
And so you had John DeLorean was desperate to save the company at all costs, and then gets involved in a drug trafficking scandal.
Right.
And
Right.
so this is the very short version of the story. But when the car was making headlines in the 80s, these were not positive headlines. This was very bad news. And then John DeLorean ultimately was acquitted. It turns out he was being set up.
Mhm.
He had been set up by the FBI, and he ends up being acquitted, but nobody remembered that. They only remembered the headlines of him being
Right.
arrested. So the car, when Back to the Future came out, it was kind of a joke. And the scene that everyone remembers, when Marty says to Doc Brown, he says, "You made a time machine out of a DeLorean." Like, it's a joke, and people were laughing at the car in the audience. But then the movie changes your perception of the car, because the car becomes this hero,
Right.
and the car becomes a celebrity and a movie star.
Mhm.
And now when you see the movie and you see that very same scene, it's not a joke anymore. Now it's
Right.
it's celebrated.
Mhm.
And so it really gave the car a second lease on life. And John DeLorean even wrote to the filmmakers. He wrote a letter to Steven Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis, the filmmakers, and he said, "Thank you for using my car and portraying it in such a positive way." And I think that really is what's responsible for the love and the positivity that people have for the car. Then once they give the car a real chance and they look at it, they see how profoundly innovative it was.
Mhm.
It was way ahead of its time. And John DeLorean had a lot of really brilliant ideas about how to manufacture cars and about what cars should be. Some of the ideas never made it into final production, but the DeLorean was going to be one of the very first production vehicles ever to have airbags.
Mhm.
And if the company had continued, that would have happened. And it's just, he's responsible for many other innovations, like when you press your brakes in any car that you drive, when you hit your brakes and your seatbelt tightens,
Right.
that's John DeLorean invented that. That
Mhm.
was his idea when he worked at Pontiac.
Right.
So when people give the car a chance, they see it was really ahead of its time.
Mhm.
And, um, John DeLorean said this car would last forever. It would never rust, and you'd never have to repaint it.
Mhm.
And it was going to be this economical, he used the word ethical. He said it was going to be, and a lot of that really held true. Um, the engine is a Volvo engine. It's virtually indestructible, and the car will never rust.
Mhm.
And all of the problems that the car have to do with other things that they didn't make themselves, electronics from the 80s,
Mhm.
and fuel injection from the 80s, and things that they didn't make. But the stuff that they actually designed and built from scratch is really good.
Mhm.
And no one wants to make a car that lasts for 40 years,
Right. They'll put
because
themselves out of business.
right.
Yeah.
But John DeLorean did it, and
Mhm.
he did it, and they're still on the road to as proof.
Right.
So I've sort of gone off on a tangent, but the point is, I think that Back to the Future gave people the opportunity to give the car a second look,
Mhm.
and give it a second chance.
Well, it sounds like you have as much passion for the DeLorean as the community does. Does that mean you have one in your driveway?
Well, so I became a member of the community while I was making the film. Um, I always wanted a DeLorean since I was a little kid, and I never thought that I would ever have one. And one of the things that happens when you are making a documentary about DeLoreans and you're traveling around the country meeting DeLorean owners is that all of a sudden everybody starts messaging you and telling you when they have a car for sale. So I sort of had the inside track. And so people had
Right.
been messaging me for years about, we have, oh, this one's for sale, this one's for sale. And one finally came up that was too good to pass up. And so
Yay!
I took the plunge. And so I've had it for about 5 years. And then my wife and I, we actually got married in the DeLorean.
Oh,
So
wow.
we were married at a drive-through chapel in the DeLorean. And
Nice.
so
In
it's
Vegas?
really in Vegas. That's right. In Vegas. So
Perfect.
it's become just a huge part of our lives. You
That's
know,
awesome. I love that. I mean, to be a storyteller, about an amazing story that has so many twists and turns, from not just about a car, but about
Mhm.
the ingenuity of the creator, about the
Mhm.
politics and all of that. And then to have it become part of your fabric in your life
Yeah,
for
we
more
became
stories.
part of the story. We
Mhm.
became part of the story. I mean, that's the thing about this car is that that's the real story about the car. That's what I try to tell people is that it's not a story about a movie car, and it's
Right.
not the story about a drug scandal, and
Right.
it's not it's the story of all these thousands of people
Mhm.
for whom the DeLorean became this integral part of their lives.
Mhm.
And that's just a phenomenon that doesn't happen,
Right.
that doesn't happen with a Toyota Camry.
No,
So,
no,
you
no.
know,
Not that I've seen. Yeah.
no, not that I know, not that I'm aware of. And that was I had one of those too. So I can tell.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can feel myself, or shall I say, see myself in a DeLorean. So, you know, you can text me any lead you get.
I think if this whole pandemic ever gets under control, my original plan was to drive the DeLorean to these festival screenings.
Oh,
And
cool.
so I could park it outside in front of the theater
Right.
and people could have a chance to see a DeLorean when they go and see the film.
Okay.
And then they could get a sense of what the car is really like.
Can you
So
send us a picture of you in front of your car for
sure,
our
I'd be happy
article?
to.
That
Sure.
would be amazing, because we're going to do an article in addition to
Hmm.
this and share all of our social media. Our YouTube,
Sure.
as I mentioned earlier, we have about 12,500 interviews on our YouTube channel. So we get a little bit of traffic
Wow.
daily. So we're hoping between that and the use of the word DeLorean as a tag, we'll get some more
Yeah,
awareness for this film.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it
Yeah,
will.
that's
There are people
amazing.
that will watch anything with that tag. They'll find it and
Sure.
they'll see it. So
Yeah, I know a few of other things that if I put that specific word tag on it, I mean, people just
Mhm.
blow up the internet to find out more. So
Mhm.
I'm absolutely thrilled to have been talking to you today, Jordan, about your amazing story, DeLorean Living the Dream. Do you have
Thank you.
anything else in the works right now, or are you still living the dream with your DeLorean?
My wife and I are living the dream with the DeLorean as much as possible in the pandemic times.
Mhm.
I don't have another movie in the works, but my eyes are open. I need to find another story that just captivates me in the same way that the DeLorean captivates me. But
Mhm.
my day job, I work in the film industry
Okay.
as a digital imaging tech, and
At
so
ILM or
I work on movies and TV shows and commercials. So
okay.
I do get to be around my other passion, which is filmmaking.
Right.
And so I'm very very lucky that I get to be a filmmaker for a living. And as far as my next personal project, I don't know what that will be yet, but
It's not
time will
retaining the DeLorean.
Oh no, there would be no painting on mine. Mine's gonna stay stainless.
Stainless.
Mine's gonna stay original as possible.
That's awesome. Thank you again for your time this morning. We'll be sure to send you the link so you can share on your social media too, and we'll tag
Thank
you
you.
in the interview. And best of, oh, should say break a leg on the festival circus, not use the
Thank
L
you.
word. Um, anyway, appreciate it. And we'll be seeing you in the festival in a few days.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.